Aita, drama, secrets, confessions. Welcome to Trove Reddit.
I never thought my marriage would play out like a full-blown revenge movie. It all started with one empty wallet. And that was enough to rip apart every single lie I had so blindly believed. The person I loved the most. The one I swore I'd spend the rest of my life with. They were the one who turned me into a joke for everyone to see. And let me tell you this, waking up one morning, to find your hard-earned money gone without a trace, while the person lying next to you fakes innocence. It cuts 100 times deeper than being betrayed by a stranger. I broke down. I cried. But I didn't stay down. I turned that pain into the most dangerous weapon I could ever hold. This isn't just another story about marriage. This is the kind of revenge that left his entire family completely stunned. So don't go anywhere. And if you love stories filled with twists and drama, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. I used to believe my marriage was a fairy tale. He was the kind of man everyone dreamed of. Charming, intelligent, with that sharp humor that could make an entire room burst out laughing with just one line. My friends would often tease me. "You're so lucky you really found yourself a treasure." And honestly, I believed it. Or at least, I thought I did. We met back in our college lecture halls. Back then, he always had this way of making me feel special. He showed up during the darkest moments of my life, reached out his hand, and pulled me out of despair. How could I have ever imagined that the same hand that once saved me would be the one to push me over the edge later on? After the wedding, we combined our finances. I handled the day-to-day expenses, while he managed the bigger things. The house, investments, savings. It never even crossed my mind to check or ask questions. Why would you doubt the person you share a bed with? At that time, trust was more precious to me than gold. Have any of you ever trusted someone so blindly that you ignored every red flag? Every weekend, we'd gather with our close friends. They say friends often notice things we can't. And it's true. Once, at a birthday party, I joked that he never seemed to take out his wallet to pay for coffee. One of my friends smirked and said, "Careful, or one day your whole wallet might vanish." Everyone laughed, and I laughed along. But looking back now, that line feels like a prophecy. A warning I was too foolish to take seriously. I still remember the pride I felt when I told my family. We don't keep secrets from each other. My mother just stayed quiet, watching me with an unreadable look. Maybe she had already sensed what was coming. If only I had listened that day, maybe things would have turned out differently. But life doesn't hand you a rewind button. You think a marriage built on beauty and trust could ever collapse? All because of a wallet. Sounds absurd, right? But for me, that wallet was a ticking time bomb. And when it finally went off, everything around me came crashing down. One ordinary morning, I opened my wallet to grab my parking card. And my heart dropped straight to the floor. The cash I had put there yesterday was gone. Not misplaced. Not forgotten. Gone, vanished, like it had never even existed. Panic hit me. I tore the house apart. Drawers. Closets. Even my handbags. Not a single bill. Have you ever had that feeling? That sickening moment when you know you're not imagining things but you can't find a shred of proof. When Mark woke up, I asked him. He just frowned, then gave this little laugh. "Are you sure you didn't just spend it without realizing?" My face burned. I thought maybe I was being careless. I even apologized for doubting him. And I believed him. But somewhere deep inside, something felt off. A few days later, it happened again. The cash in my wallet disappeared. But this time, I knew for sure. I had checked it the night before, every bill still there. So why was it empty in the morning? I looked at Mark. His expression was calm. Too calm. If you were me, would you dare to ask your husband or your wife, "Did you take the money?" I started running little tests. I memorized every bill, even the serial numbers. I took photos of my wallet before going to bed. And then, the next morning, one bill was gone. My stomach dropped. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't a mistake. Someone was deliberately taking my money. And the only person with a key to this house was Mark. I stood frozen in the living room. One question echoed in my head. Why? Why would the man I loved do this to me? Was our entire marriage just one long trap? I knew this was only the beginning. But I couldn't have imagined it was about to get 1,000 times worse. And if you've been watching this far and want to hear the shocking twist that comes next, make sure you hit that subscribe button because trust me, you won't want to miss it. After the third time, I knew this was no coincidence. Every time I left cash in my wallet, by morning, a little would be missing. Not enough to scream theft right away, but just enough to make me question my own sanity. As if someone was deliberately testing my memory. Have you ever felt watched inside your own home? That creeping feeling that someone's playing games with you. Under your own roof. I started watching Mark more closely. He often came home late, claiming it was overtime. But some nights, his shirt was wrinkled, his hair a mess like he just walked out of some kind of chaos. When I asked, he forced a laugh. Oh. Coworkers dragged me out for drinks. But his eyes told a different story. That night, I tried a little trick. I left a strange amount of cash in my wallet. Exactly 347,000. And I slipped in a note that said, "I know what you're doing." The next morning every bill was gone. The note. Also gone. No explanation. No confrontation. Mark acted like nothing had happened. Now tell me who could stay that calm if they were truly innocent. I began to realize this wasn't just about money. Something darker was happening. One afternoon, I discovered a huge withdrawal from our joint bank account. The money vanished within minutes without a trace. When I asked, he claimed it was for some high-risk investment that would double our profits. I smiled weakly, but inside, my blood was boiling. High-risk investment? Or was he hiding something far worse? Every time I looked into Mark's eyes, all I saw was a wall of lies. The man who once felt like my safe place now looked like a stranger I couldn't trust. And the part that chilled me the most, I knew I still didn't have the full truth. Have you ever felt your gut screaming that everything is about to explode? That's exactly where I was. And I knew this bomb was ticking. When it finally went off, I'd either lose everything, or I'd take everything back. One night, I pretended to be asleep. Then I heard its soft footsteps, creeping from the living room. I held my breath, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would give me away. Through the crack in the door, I saw Mark. He was rifling through my wallet. Like a professional thief. He pulled out the cash, slid it into his pocket, and then he pulled out his phone and took a picture of it. I froze. Why on earth would he photograph the money he just stole? The next morning, I followed him in secret. But he didn't go to work. Instead, he drove to a dark little cafe on the corner of town. I trailed behind. And what I saw shattered me. Mark sat across from a woman I'd never seen before. On the table between them were stacks of cash, the same bills missing from my wallet and our bank account. She laughed, leaned over, and placed her hand on his shoulder. In that moment, I wanted to storm in, rip everything apart. But I held myself back. And the more I followed him, the darker the truth became. It wasn't just one woman. It was several. Mark was living a double life, a life I had no clue about. My money, my trust, everything I gave him, had become fuel for this filthy world he was hiding. Do you know what it feels like to realize you've been turned into a joke? A spectacle? I do. And that rage, that's enough to turn an ordinary person into something dangerous. That night, I looked myself in the mirror and made a vow. If he thinks this is a game, then I'll show him what the real rules look like. But I knew I couldn't just lash out. I needed precision. I needed to plan a trap clever enough to make him fall on the very battlefield he thought he owned. And that was the moment everything began to change. If you think this twist was shocking, trust me, you're wrong. What comes next will leave you absolutely chilled. So hit that subscribe button now, because you do not want to miss the next reveal. I sat in the dark that entire night, my mind spinning with the images I just witnessed. Mark, the perfect husband in everyone's eyes, was nothing more than a fraud. A man who drained his own wife to feed his dirty little life outside our home. I cried. I shook. But then, the rage inside me ignited. Some people would walk away, file for divorce, end things quietly. But not me. I couldn't let him stroll around, head held high, pretending he was innocent. No. He was going to pay. And not just with money, but with his pride, his career, everything he valued most. Have you ever stared at your reflection and asked yourself, who am I, after being betrayed? I did. And my answer was clear: I would never be a victim again. That night, I began writing a plan. Step by step. Detail by detail. Not just to catch him, but to make sure everyone saw the truth. His family, his friends, even his mistresses. I wanted every single one of them to see Mark's real face. That night, I stopped being the weak, naive wife. I became the hunter. And Mark became my prey. I thought of all the times I'd forgiven his little lies. The nights I'd excused his late returns. The moments I told myself love was enough to cover the cracks. Every one of those would now become my weapons. Have you ever heard the phrase, a traitor fears silence the most? That's exactly what I chose. Silence. Silence to watch. Silence to collect evidence. Silence to let him believe I knew nothing. And when the time came, my strike would hit so hard, he'd never recover. From the moment I chose revenge, I started living two lives. By day, I was still the smiling, gentle wife. By night, I became cold, calculating. every move aimed straight at the dark heart of Mark. I began collecting evidence. Mini cameras hidden around the house. A secret tracker tucked into his car. Recordings of every suspicious phone call. Day by day, my notebook grew thicker, filled with proof of betrayal. Have you ever felt like you were living inside a crime thriller? Because that's exactly what my life had become. Then I decided to play an even sharper game. I set up a fake bank account in my name, loaded it with bait money. I made sure Mark saw the transfer notification. And just as I predicted, his eyes lit up like a predator catching the scent of blood. But I wasn't doing this alone. I pulled in allies. A close friend at the bank. A colleague who knew the law inside and out. Together, we built a plan so airtight, not only would Mark be exposed, he'd be trapped legally, with no way out. And then, an unexpected player entered the game. My neighbor, the one I thought never paid attention to anyone, came to me with a video. A clip of Mark, outside our house, secretly exchanging something with a stranger. I almost cried. Not from pain this time, but from relief. Because I knew. The end game was finally approaching. Have you ever counted the hours, the minutes, waiting for the betrayer to pay the price? That was me. And I swore, when the moment came, nothing and no one would save him. And if you want to witness exactly how my plan unfolded and how I turned a traitor into the world's biggest joke, make sure you hit subscribe right now. Because the next part, it'll take your breath away. The day of reckoning finally came. I placed the bait wallet right on the table, stuffed with more cash than usual. I even left the login details to that fake bank account exposed, like blood in the water for a hungry shark. Then I waited, watching through the tiny hidden camera I had planted in the living room. Mark walked in. His eyes swept the room, then locked onto the wallet. I could see the hunger in his face. He opened it, slipped the cash into his pocket. But he didn't stop there. He pulled out his phone, logged into the fake account, and transferred every last cent. I held my breath. That was it. With his own hands, he had signed his death warrant. And right then the door swung open. I stepped out, laptop in hand, the screen glowing with every shred of evidence. Mark froze. No excuses. No resistance. Just a pale face and wide, terrified eyes, as if he'd just seen a ghost. But I wasn't finished. Because I had invited his family to witness everything. His parents. His siblings. Even a few close friends. They all stood there, watching the man they thought was perfect being stripped bare in real time. Can you imagine? The golden boy. The role model. Exposed as nothing more than a thief and a liar right in front of the people whose respect he prized the most. He stammered, I can explain. But I didn't give him the chance. One by one, I laid out the evidence. Photos. Recordings. Videos. With each piece I showed, it was like driving another nail into his coffin. The room grew heavier and heavier, no laughter, no sympathy, only silence thick enough to choke on. And in that silence, I felt it. Victory. The man who once made me feel like a fool now stood exposed, ruined in the eyes of everyone who mattered to him. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Because this was only the beginning of his downfall. Tell me, have you ever dreamed of the exact moment the betrayer is dragged into the light? I had dreamed of it for months. And now, it was finally real. Right after the moment Mark was exposed in front of his family, I knew I had to deliver the final blow. I didn't just want him humiliated. I wanted him to lose everything. I made a phone call. Just a few minutes later, 2 police officers knocked on the door. Mark was stunned, tried to resist, but all the evidence was against him. They handcuffed him right there in the living room, in front of his parents and friends. Can you imagine the sight? A man who once strutted with arrogance, acting like the center of the universe, now being dragged away like some cheap criminal. But I wasn't finished yet. I had already sent all the evidence to the company where he worked. Within 24 hours, Mark was fired. Every single colleague knew the truth. His name spread across public forums not as a financial expert anymore, but as a pathetic thief. The biggest shock. I transferred all the money from the bait account into a charity fund, and then announced it in front of everyone. I said straight out, your dirty money is worth nothing except to help others. The look on Mark's face, when he heard those words. I swear I'll never forget it. It was a mix of despair, humiliation, and bitterness. His family. None of them defended him anymore. His mother cried, his father turned away, and his siblings stayed completely silent. He lost everything. Not just money, but also his honor, his career, and the trust of his loved ones. I looked at that scene and asked myself, was this justice? Or had I gone too far? But then, when I remembered the endless nights of betrayal, the shameless lies, I knew I had only just taken back a fraction of what I had lost. And do you know what the best part is? This story was only just beginning. Mark thought it all ended with the handcuffs. But no. One fine lack was still waiting for him. If you want to witness the shocking conclusion where I unleash the fatal blow that makes sure Mark can never raise his head again, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't believe what's about to happen next. I thought that Mark being arrested, humiliated, and losing everything was the end. But fate had one more twist in store, something I never could have expected. A week later, I received an anonymous letter. Inside were photos of Mark and me. Moments I thought were private, right in our own home. Conversations only the two of us knew. Someone had been watching us for a long time. I froze. At first, I thought it was Mark's final game, but he was in jail. He couldn't have done this. And then I realized something terrifying. The neighbor who helped me with the evidence before wasn't just some kindly passerby. He had been the one placing cameras all along, using the tragedy of my marriage to collect information. I had unwittingly become a pawn in someone else's plan. And do you know what shocked me the most? The letter came with a note. If you can take down your husband this easily, imagine what we could do together. We could profit from other betrayers like him. I sat there, stunned. Everything I thought I controlled, every moment I believed I was in charge, was just part of someone else's game. Was I the avenger? Or just a puppet in the hands of someone more cunning? That night, I stared into the mirror. The reflection staring back wasn't the victim I had once been. Not the woman who had been deceived. It was someone else entirely. Someone who knew one unshakable truth. In this game, you either hunt, or you get hunted. I didn't tear up the letter. I didn't call the police. I just smiled and slid it into a drawer. Perhaps it's time for a new game. And this is really just the beginning.